The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched high above the gathered representatives, its crystal dome revealing the stars beyond. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the human podium, her hands clasped behind her back as she addressed the assembly. Her voice remained calm and measured, though she felt the tension in the room like a physical weight. The mineral rights to the colonies in question were established under treaty 70 years ago, Sarah said. We propose a joint mining operation where both our peoples can benefit. There is enough for everyone. Across the chamber, War Premier Zexthul rose from his seat. The massive reptilian stood nearly 3 meters tall, his scales gleaming like polished bronze under the lights, his 3 eyes fixed on Sarah with something that looked like contempt. Humans, he hissed, his translator rendering his words into standard galactic. Always talking, always proposing, always compromising. He stepped forward, his clawed feet clicking on the marble floor. My people are warriors. We do not beg for what we can take. Those worlds lie in our expansion corridor. You will surrender them, or we will remove you. Murmurs rippled through the council chamber. The other delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Kratoth hegemony had been aggressive before, but never this openly hostile. Several species looked to the humans, expecting them to back down as they usually did. Humans were known for their patience, their diplomacy, their endless willingness to negotiate. Sarah met Zexthul's gaze without flinching. We will not surrender sovereign human territory, but we remain open to discussion. Zexthul laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Discussion. Your species has been part of this council for 150 years. In all that time you have never once raised your weapons. You have never shown strength. He turned to address the full assembly. The Kratoth respect only power. Humans have none. They are merchants and talkers, nothing more. That is not true, Sarah began, but Zexthul cut her off. When did humans last fight a war? When did you last prove yourselves in battle? The war premier's voice grew louder. You sit in your colonies, soft and weak, protected by treaties and council laws. But what happens when someone stops caring about your papers and agreements? Sarah felt her jaw tighten. If only he knew. If only any of them knew the real reason humans avoided conflict. But she kept her expression neutral. Violence is not strength, War Premier. True strength is choosing peace when you have the capacity for war. Coward's words, Zexthul spat. He turned and walked toward the exit, his delegation following. At the doorway, he looked back. You have 1 cycle to evacuate those colonies. After that, the Kratoth will take them, and your council will do nothing because you never do. The massive doors closed behind him. The chamber erupted in conversation. The council speaker, an elderly Vexnari with pale blue skin, called for order. Ambassador Chen, what is Earth's response to this threat? Sarah took a slow breath. We hope that cooler heads will prevail. We will continue to pursue diplomatic solutions, but we will also defend our people if necessary. The speaker nodded, though his expression showed doubt. Everyone knew the Kratoth military was the second strongest in the galaxy. The humans had never shown any significant military presence. Most assumed they simply didn't have one. 3 days later, the war began. The Kratoth fleet arrived without warning at New Vancouver, a mining colony of 15,000 souls. The attack was brutal and efficient. They destroyed the orbital platforms first, then bombed the major settlements from space. Then they moved to New Taipei and Nova Lagos. By the time the attacks ended, 40,000 human civilians were dead. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Delegates arrived expecting to discuss sanctions, reparations, perhaps a strongly worded condemnation. The Kratoth delegation sat in their seats, openly proud of their actions, but the human delegation's chairs remained empty. Where are the humans? The speaker asked. Have they submitted a response? An aide approached with a data tablet, his hands shaking slightly. Sir, we've received a message from Earth, just 1 sentence. What does it say? The aide read aloud. All diplomatic channels are suspended until further notice. The chamber fell silent. No one knew what to make of it. The Kratoth representative seemed pleased. Zexthul's voice carried across the chamber. See, they submit. They hide. Just as I said, they are weak. But in the back of the chamber, Ambassador Krenal of the Zethian Collective sat very still. His species had longer lifespans than most and better memories. He pulled up an old file on his personal console, one he hadn't looked at in over a century. It was a historical document from when humans first joined the council. The file was labeled Human Military History, Classified Review, Before First Contact. Krenal began to read, and as he did, his forehands began to tremble. World War I, World War II, nuclear weapons, biological warfare, chemical weapons. The death tolls were staggering. The tactics were horrifying. And then, mysteriously, it all stopped. Humanity had unified, looked at what they had done to themselves, and made a choice. They had chosen peace. Not because they couldn't fight, but because they knew exactly what they were capable of when they did. Krenal stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Speaker, I request an immediate private session." "We have made a terrible mistake, but it was too late." 72 hours had passed since the attacks, and at the edge of Kratoth space something was happening. Ships were emerging from quantum slip drives. Human ships. Not a few dozen. Not a few hundred thousands. The Terran Defense Force had been silent because they were mobilizing. And now they had arrived. Admiral Marcus Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the TDF Indomitable, watching the stars shift back to normal space as his fleet completed its jump. Around his flagship, 3,000 warships materialized in perfect formation. The bridge crew worked in focused silence, their movements precise and practiced. "Status report," Marcus said quietly. "All ships accounted for, sir," his tactical officer replied. "We're holding position at the edge of Kratoth scanning range." "They don't know we're here yet." Marcus nodded. He looked older than his 60 years, with gray streaking his dark hair and deep lines around his eyes. Those lines had been earned. He'd been a young officer during the Unity Wars, the last time humans had fought each other. That had been 40 years ago, and he remembered every detail. On Earth, Dr. Yuki Tanaka sat in her office at the War History Institute, surrounded by old books and display screens. She was recording a message to be broadcast to the Galactic Council, though she knew they probably wouldn't listen until it was too late. Her hands shook slightly as she began. "My name is Dr. Yuki Tanaka, and I study human warfare. Not because I love war, but because I never want us to forget what we're capable of." She pulled up images on the screen behind her. Trenches filled with bodies, cities turned to ash, mushroom clouds rising over destroyed civilizations. For thousands of years, humans fought each other. We developed weapons specifically designed to kill as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. We created mustard gas, which dissolved human lungs. We built atomic bombs that could erase entire cities in seconds. We engineered diseases meant to kill millions. She paused, her voice catching. By the year 2087, we had enough nuclear weapons to destroy all life on Earth 7 times over. 7 times. We stood at the edge of total extinction. And then somehow we stopped. We looked at what we'd become and made a choice. Never again. Back on the Indomitable, Marcus received a transmission from Earth. The Council of Defense had sent their decision. He read it twice, then closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, his expression was hard as stone. "Communications, open a channel to Kratoth High Command. All frequencies." The comm officer worked quickly. "Channel open, sir." Marcus spoke clearly. "This is Admiral Marcus Okonkwo of the Terran Defense Force. You have 48 hours to evacuate all non-combatants from your military installations and forward bases. After that time, we will begin operations. Any civilian vessel broadcasting the proper identification codes will not be harmed. This is your only warning." He cut the transmission before they could respond. Around him, his crew remained silent. They knew what was coming. They'd trained for this their whole lives, hoping they'd never have to use that training. On the Kratoth homeworld, War Premier Zexthol listened to the message and roared with laughter. 48 hours? They give us warning. They truly are fools. He turned to his generals. Mobilize all fleets. We will crush them before they can strike. Show them what real warriors look like. The Kratoth military machine rumbled to life. Thousands of warships built over 8 centuries of conquest moved toward human space. Their vessels were massive, heavily armored, covered in weapons. Each ship could devastate a small fleet on its own. They had never lost a major engagement. On the Galactic Council floor, Ambassador Krenal was trying desperately to make the others understand. "You must listen. I've reviewed their history. Humans don't think about war the way we do. They've studied it, perfected it, made it into a science. They've never fought a war since joining the Council," another delegate argued. "How can they possibly stand against the Kratoth?" "Because they chose not to fight." Krenal pulled up more files. Look at this. The human concept called total war. They don't just fight armies. When threatened with extinction, they mobilize their entire civilization. Every factory, every resource, every citizen becomes part of the war effort. Another delegate looked skeptical. Even if that's true, the Kratoth have superior numbers and technology. Their weapons are proven in battle. Krenol's hands trembled as he pulled up another file. This is a human weapon from their year 1945. A single bomb called Little Boy. It destroyed an entire city and killed 80,000 people instantly. That was with their primitive technology, over 900 years ago. Now ask yourself, what have they built since then that they've never shown us? The chamber grew very quiet. The 48 hours passed slowly. Human ships held their positions waiting. The Kratoth fleet massed at the border, confident and ready. Smaller species evacuated their ships and personnel from the area, sensing that something terrible was about to happen. On the Indomitable, Marcus reviewed the battle plans one final time. His orders were clear: minimize casualties. Disable, don't destroy. Show them what humanity could do, but hold back the worst weapons. Give them a chance to surrender. But if they refused, he had authorization for Phase 2. And Phase 2 removed most of the restrictions. He thought about his grandfather, who had fought in the Unity Wars. The old man had told him once, "Marcus, the reason we're so good at peace is because we know exactly what the alternative looks like. We've lived it. We've breathed it. And we decided we never want to smell that smoke again." Marcus opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is actual. You know your targets. You know your orders. Remember, we're not here to prove we're better killers than they are. We're here to prove that we chose peace from a position of strength, not weakness. Weapons free on my mark." He looked at the tactical display. 300 Kratoth warships were in formation ahead, with thousands more behind them. The odds were 10-1 against the humans. Any other species would have retreated. Marcus smiled grimly. "All ships, engage." The first human attack began with perfect coordination. 3,000 ships moved as one, their targeting computers linked, their tactics refined through centuries of study and simulation. They didn't charge forward like the Kratoth expected. They executed a maneuver called the Horns of the Bull, first used by a human general named Hannibal over 3,000 years ago. And the Kratoth, for all their military pride, had never seen anything like it. The Kratoth flagship Herald of Conquest sat at the center of their defensive formation. Its commander, Fleetmaster Krelzar, watched his displays with growing confusion. The human ships were smaller than he expected, not even half the size of his heavy cruisers. But they moved with a precision that seemed impossible. "They're spreading out," his tactical officer reported. "Strange formation. They're leaving their flanks exposed." Krelzar clicked his mandibles together in satisfaction. "They're amateurs. They don't know how to maintain a proper battle line. All ships prepare to punish their mistake. Target the exposed vessels." But before his fleet could fire, the human ships did something unexpected. They accelerated hard, not toward the Kratoth fleet, but around it. The center held position while the wings swept outward in a wide arc, moving faster than any Kratoth ship could match. "What are they doing?" Krelzar demanded. Then the humans opened fire. Their weapons were different. Instead of the energy beams most species used, rails mounted on their hulls launched solid projectiles at incredible speeds. Magnetic accelerators sent tungsten rods screaming through space at a fraction of light speed. When they hit hard. A Kratoth cruiser's shields flared and failed under a sustained barrage. The projectiles punched through armor plating designed to withstand plasma fire. The ship didn't explode dramatically. It simply stopped working, its systems destroyed, its crew shaken but mostly alive. "Return fire," Krelzar roared. The Kratoth fleet unleashed a massive volley of energy weapons, but the human ships were already moving, their trajectories calculated by artificial intelligence that could predict and counter every move. Beams that should have hit found only empty space. On the Indomitable, Marcus watched the battle unfold with calm focus. "Tactical status on targets?" "Their defensive grid is stronger than expected, sir, but predictable. Marking weak points now. We've disabled 17 ships without critical casualties. Our losses are 0. Good. Remember, disable only. We're not here to kill them. We're here to teach them." The battle raged for 4 hours. The human fleet moved like a school of fish, every ship connected through quantum-linked communications that allowed instant coordination. They used tactics called fire and movement, concentration of force, and defensive depth, terms that meant nothing to the Kratoth, who fought with straightforward aggression and overwhelming firepower. Young Officer Rixtal stood at his station on one of the Kratoth cruisers, watching the displays in horror. His ship had been hit 3 times, and each time, the humans had targeted specific systems. The weapons were gone, but life support remained. The engines were disabled, but the medical bay was untouched. It was surgical, precise, and terrifying. "They're not trying to kill us," he said quietly. His commander shot him an angry look. "They're weak. They can't penetrate our hulls fully." But Rixtal knew better. He'd studied at the military academy, learned the theory of warfare. What the humans were doing required incredible accuracy and restraint. It was harder to disable a ship without killing the crew than to simply destroy it. Much harder. Above the Kratoth orbital defense platform called Fist of Empire, the human fleet finished the demonstration. In 4 hours, they had disabled the entire defensive network. 147 Kratoth ships hung in space, powerless but intact. Their crews were alive, and the humans hadn't lost a single vessel. Marcus opened a broadcast on all Kratoth military frequencies. His face appeared on every screen, his expression grave. "Warriors of the Kratoth hegemony, I am Admiral Marcus Okonkwo. We have disabled your defenses. Count your dead. You'll find there are very few. We targeted your weapons, your engines, your systems. We avoided your crew quarters, your medical facilities, your life support." He paused, letting that sink in. "You killed 40,000 of our civilians. Men, women, children. We could have done the same to you. We could have turned your ships into coffins and your stations into graves. We have the weapons. We have the capability. But we chose not to." Behind him, the bridge displays showed the carnage humans had inflicted on themselves throughout history. Images carefully selected to make a point. "This is the difference between your people and mine. You fight because you think it makes you strong. We stopped fighting because we know exactly how much destruction we can cause. We've done it to ourselves for thousands of years. This demonstration was mercy. This was us holding back." War Premier Zexthal watched the broadcast from his command center on the homeworld. His claws dug into the armrests of his chair. Around him, his advisors shifted nervously. "He's bluffing," Zexthal growled. "They got lucky. They used some trick. We still have the superior fleet. Order all remaining forces to attack their colonies. Show them we will not be intimidated by words and theatrics." "War Premier," one advisor said carefully, "perhaps we should consider—" "No." Zexthal stood, his full height dominating the room. "I am War Premier. I have led our people to victory for 30 cycles. We do not back down to soft creatures who talk about mercy and restraint. Launch the attack." The order went out. Kratoth fleets positioned near human territory moved in, targeting 3 more colonies. If the humans wanted to play at war, Zexthal would show them what real warfare looked like. On Earth, in the Council of Defense chambers, the leaders gathered around a table. They'd watched the demonstration. They'd seen the Kratoth response. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Defense Coordinator Hassan spoke. "They're not going to stop." "No," agreed Coordinator Yamamoto. "They've built their entire culture around military dominance. Backing down now would destroy everything they believe in." Coordinator Rodriguez looked at the casualty reports from the new attacks. More human lives lost, more civilians dead. She closed her eyes. The demonstration didn't work. Hassan pulled up a document on the central display. Everyone in the room knew what it was. Phase 2 authorization, the removal of most weapons restrictions, the unleashing of capabilities that humanity had kept locked away for 150 years of galactic peace. "We need to vote," Hassan said quietly. "All in favor of authorizing Phase 2? One by one, the coordinators raised their hands. Every single one. They'd all hoped it wouldn't come to this. They'd all wanted the demonstration to be enough. Rodriguez spoke the words that needed to be said. "Send the authorization to Admiral Okonkwo. Rules of engagement remain the Geneva Conventions and Hague Conventions. But everything else," she took a shaky breath, "weapons free." The message was transmitted through quantum channels, reaching Marcus within seconds. He read it twice, then looked up at his bridge crew. Good people, all of them. People who'd chosen military service not because they wanted to fight, but because they wanted to protect. "All ships," Marcus said into the fleet channel, his voice heavy. "Phase 2 is authorized. We gave them a chance. They chose to continue. "We will not make that mistake again. All commanders, you know your targets. Show them what humanity really is when we stop holding back." Across human space, military installations that had been quiet for over a century came to life. Weapons that had never been tested in actual combat powered up. Ships equipped with technology that violated 36 galactic treaties on humane warfare launched from hidden bases. The Kratoth thought they'd seen what humans could do. They were wrong. The demonstration was over. The real war was about to begin. The attack began at 400 hours Galactic Standard Time, simultaneously across 12 star systems. The Kratoth had spent 800 years building their military empire. The humans dismantled it in 11 days. On the third day, Rixtal stood in the ruins of Firebase Kormath, one of the hegemony's strongest military installations. 3 hours ago it had been operational, with 5,000 troops and enough weapons to level a continent. Now the weapons were slag, the defensive turrets destroyed, and the ammunition stores had been vaporized by precision strikes. But the barracks stood untouched. The medical center was intact, and human soldiers in powered armor were setting up a field hospital. Rixtal watched as a human medic, her armor marked with red crosses, treated a wounded Kratoth soldier. She worked quickly and efficiently, speaking in translated Kratoth as she stabilized his injuries. "You're going to be fine. The wound is clean. You'll be back on your feet in a few days." "Why?" the wounded soldier asked. "Why help us?" The medic looked at him through her helmet's visor. "Because you're hurt. That's all that matters right now. War doesn't mean we stop being decent people." Across the galaxy, the same scene repeated at 47 installations. Human forces struck with such precision that their own battle computers had trouble keeping up. They used something they called network-centric warfare, where every soldier, every ship, every drone was connected to a massive tactical system. They could see the entire battlefield at once and coordinate accordingly. The Kratoth generals, used to simpler combat, couldn't adapt fast enough. On the Galactic Council station, delegates gathered to watch the broadcasts. Every species in the galaxy had their sensors pointed at the war zone, and what they saw shook them to their cores. Human Marines assaulted a Kratoth command bunker. They moved in small teams using cover and suppressing fire, advancing with tactics refined over millennia. But when they breached the final door and found enemy soldiers inside, they didn't kill them. They used non-lethal weapons, stunning them and then secured them as prisoners. "They're following rules," Ambassador Kreenel said quietly. "Even now, in the middle of a war, they're following their own ethical codes." Another delegate pulled up historical files. "These are their Geneva Conventions. Laws of war they created centuries ago. Treatment of prisoners, protection of civilians, prohibition of certain weapons. They're actually following them. But look at what they're still using," another pointed out. The displays showed human weapons. Electromagnetic pulse bombs that fried electronics. Kinetic strikes from orbit that hit with the force of small nuclear weapons. Drone swarms that overwhelmed Kratoth point defenses. And behind all of it, artificial intelligence that made their military move like a single vast organism. "They're not using even half of what they're capable of," Kreenal said. "I've seen their files. They have weapons that could crack planets, biological agents that could wipe out entire species, nanomachines that could disassemble matter at the molecular level. They've banned all of it. Even now, even in war, they're still holding back." On the Indomitable, Marcus reviewed the daily reports. The campaigns were going exactly as planned. Kratoth military capability was being systematically eliminated. Human casualties remained remarkably low, and civilian casualties on both sides were minimal. His executive officer approached. "Sir, we've intercepted a transmission. The Kratoth are planning something desperate." Marcus pulled up the intelligence report. His blood ran cold. "They're targeting Earth. The plan was insane. War Premier Zexthul had ordered 6 long-range antimatter missiles to be fired at humanity's homeworld. They would take weeks to reach their target. But if they hit, the devastation would be catastrophic. It was the act of a leader who knew he was losing and wanted to hurt his enemy as badly as possible before the end. The missiles launched from a hidden base in the outer territories. Their drives engaged, pushing them toward Earth at tremendous speed. On Earth, in the Defense Command Center buried beneath the Swiss Alps, alarms began to sound. Coordinator Hassan pulled up the tracking data. 6 inbound missiles. Antimatter warheads. They're 3 weeks out. Are they really that foolish? Yamamoto asked. Do they not know? Rodriguez smiled grimly. They don't know. We've never told them. Activate the grid. Across Earth's solar system, stations that had orbited silently for over a century suddenly came online. The Helios network, named after an ancient sun god, was humanity's secret defense system, a network of energy weapons, missile interceptors, and defensive satellites so extensive that it could track and destroy anything approaching Earth. The Kratoth missiles made it to the edge of the solar system before the grid detected them. They were destroyed 17 days from Earth, vaporized by laser batteries with power outputs that made the sun look dim by comparison. When War Premier Zexthul learned his desperate gambit had failed, he sat in silence for a long time. Then he ordered the full fleet to assemble for one final attack. If he was going to fall, he would fall like a warrior, in battle against the enemy. The Kratoth armada gathered above their homeworld. Every remaining warship, every functional vessel, every last resource they had. 3,000 ships ready for a final stand. Marcus received the intelligence reports and felt a weight settle in his chest. They were going to make him do it. They were going to force humanity to show the galaxy what they really were. All fleets converge on the Kratoth homeworld. We end this today. The human armada arrived in overwhelming force. 5,000 ships materialized in the Kratoth home system, surrounding the planet. They didn't attack immediately. Instead, Marcus broadcast one final message. War Premier Zexthul, you have lost. Your military has been neutralized. Your fleets are destroyed. Your installations are disabled. Surrender now, and no more of your people need to die. On the surface of the Kratoth homeworld in his command chamber, Zexthul stood tall. His advisors begged him to surrender. His generals pleaded with him to see reason, but his pride wouldn't allow it. Never, he transmitted back. A Kratoth warrior does not surrender. Come then, humans. Show us this terrible power you claim to have. We will meet death with honor. Marcus closed his eyes. He'd known it would come to this. He opened a channel to Earth. This is Admiral Okonkwo, requesting final authorization. There was a long pause. Then Coordinator Hassan's voice came through. Admiral, you have full authorization. May the future forgive us. Marcus opened his eyes and looked at his weapons officer. Target the fleet only. Stay away from population centers, and make it quick. The human fleet opened fire with weapons that had never been used in galactic warfare. Particle beams that could shatter molecules. Gravitational weapons that crushed ships like empty cans. Quantum disruptors that simply erased matter from existence. The battle lasted 7 minutes. When it ended, the Kratoth fleet was gone. Not damaged, not disabled. Gone. Orbital space around their homeworld was clear except for debris that would burn up in the atmosphere. On the surface, billions of Kratoth citizens looked up at the sky, expecting death to rain down, but nothing came. The human fleet held position, and then a new message broadcast on every frequency, to every device in every language on the planet. It was time for humanity to explain who they really were, and more importantly, why they had chosen peace in the first place. Ambassador Sarah Chen appeared on every screen across the Kratoth homeworld. Behind her, images began to play, not of the recent war, but of something far older and far more terrible. People of the Kratoth hegemony, she began, her voice gentle but firm. You need to understand who we are. Not who your leaders told you we were, but who we really are. The images showed Earth, beautiful, blue, covered in clouds and oceans. Then the view shifted, diving into humanity's past. 3,000 years ago, we were tribes fighting over territory. 2,000 years ago, we were nations conquering each other. 1,000 years ago, we had weapons that could kill thousands in a single day. The images showed ancient warfare. Swords and spears, then muskets and cannons, then bombs and artillery. And then we got very, very good at killing. The footage shifted to the world wars. Trenches filled with bodies. Cities burning. Mushroom clouds rising over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In the span of just 6 years, we killed over 70 million of our own people. We built factories whose only purpose was to kill more efficiently. We created weapons of mass destruction and used them on ourselves. Young Rixtal watched the broadcast from his cell in a human detention facility. The images made him feel sick. The scale of death, the casual cruelty, the industrial efficiency of it all. But the worst part, Sarah continued, was that we got better at it. We built nuclear weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We engineered diseases to use as weapons. We created chemical agents that could melt human flesh. By the middle of our 21st century, we had enough weapons to end all life on our planet several times over. She paused, and the images stopped on a single picture. Earth from space. Beautiful and fragile. And then we stopped. Not because we ran out of enemies. Not because we became weak. We stopped because we finally understood what we were doing to ourselves. We looked at our children and asked ourselves if this was the world we wanted to leave them. The answer was no. The scene shifted to show humans working together, building, creating, healing. We disarmed. We destroyed most of our weapons. We kept just enough to defend ourselves, locked away, hoping we'd never need them again. We built a peace that has lasted for over 2 centuries, not because we forgot how to fight, but because we remembered all too well. Sarah's expression grew harder. Your war premier thought our peace meant weakness. He thought because we chose diplomacy, we were incapable of war. He was wrong. We chose peace precisely because we know what war truly costs. The broadcast ended with a simple statement. We could have destroyed your world. We chose not to. We hope you'll choose to learn from our mistakes instead of repeating them. On the surface, in military headquarters, officers surrounded War Premier Zexthal. But they weren't there to follow him anymore. They were led by young Rixtal, who had been released by the humans specifically for this purpose. War Premier, Rixtal said quietly. It's over. You led us to destruction. You attacked a species that had transcended warfare and forced them to remember what they were capable of. The humans spared our world when they could have cracked it open like an egg. I won't let you waste that mercy. Zexthal roared and reached for his weapon, but he was too slow. His own officers restrained him. Within an hour, he was in human custody, and Rixtal was transmitting surrender to the fleet above. The peace negotiations took 3 months. The humans' terms surprised everyone. They didn't demand complete disarmament of the Kratoth. Instead, they required military reform and oversight. The hegemony would maintain defensive forces, but aggressive expansion was over. Reparations would be paid, but through resource sharing and labor, not crippling debt. And every Kratoth officer above the rank of captain would attend what humans called the Academy. The Academy was established on a neutral world, run by Dr. Yuki Tanaka and a staff of historians and military theorists. Rixtal was in the first class of 500 Kratoth officers. On his first day, he sat in an auditorium with his former enemies and allies, all of them there to learn. Dr. Tanaka stood at the podium. Welcome to Military History 101. You're here because your people need to understand what warfare truly is. Not glory, not honor, not strength. Warfare is what happens when intelligence fails. It's a tool of last resort, not first choice. Over the months, they studied human conflicts in excruciating detail. The strategies, yes, but more importantly, the costs. They learned about the Holocaust, the atomic bombings, the Vietnam War, the Unity Wars. They learned about soldiers who came home broken, cities that took generations to rebuild, and scars that never truly healed. This is what we're capable of, Dr. Tanaka told them. Every species has the capacity for terrible violence. The question is whether you'll choose to rise above it. On the Galactic Council, the Terra Accords were passed unanimously. Humanity would serve as the Council's military force of last resort, to be deployed only when every diplomatic option had failed. It was a responsibility that humans accepted reluctantly. Ambassador Sarah Chen addressed the Council one final time on the matter. We don't want this role. We never wanted to be the galaxy's warriors, but we'll accept it because we understand the responsibility that comes with power. We'll protect those who can't protect themselves. We'll stop aggressors like the Kratoth used to be, but we'll do it our way, with rules and restraint and mercy. 5 years later, Sarah visited the memorial on New Vancouver, one of the first colonies attacked. The monument listed the names of all 40,000 civilians who had died. Human and Kratoth officials stood together at the ceremony, both species grieving for the pointless loss. Rixtal, now a general in the reformed Kratoth Defense Force, stood beside her. We didn't understand, he said quietly. We thought peace meant weakness. We didn't realize it meant you were strong enough to choose not to fight. A lot of species make that mistake, Sarah replied. The truly strong don't need to prove it constantly. That evening, Sarah sat with former war premier Zexthal in his comfortable but secure quarters on Earth. He was older now, his scales dull, his eyes tired. He had spent 5 years learning everything he'd refused to see before. "I was a fool," he said simply. "I led my people to devastation because I couldn't imagine that peace could come from strength. I thought you were prey. I didn't understand that you were predators who had chosen to be something better." "We are all capable of being monsters," Sarah said. "The difference is in the choice we make every day to be something else." At the academy, a new class of students from a dozen species sat in Dr. Tanaka's lecture hall. A young alien raised its appendage. "Professor, I have a question. You've shown us all the terrible things humans did to each other. All the wars and weapons and death. My question is simple. Why did you stop?" "What changed?" Dr. Tanaka smiled sadly. "We realized the truth. The real enemy was never each other. It was our own worst nature. Our capacity for hate, for violence, for dehumanizing those who are different. The only way to defeat that enemy was to choose every single day to be better than what we're capable of." She pulled up the final image of her lecture. Children from a dozen species playing together in a park on Earth, laughing and chasing each other without a care. "That's why we stopped, because we wanted this instead of ashes, because we finally learned that the strongest weapon isn't a bomb or a gun or a warship. It's the choice to put down those weapons and build something better." High above Earth, Admiral Marcus Okonkwo stood on the observation deck of his flagship, now serving peacetime patrol duty. The ship's weapons were powered down, its war algorithms dormant. He hoped they would stay that way, but if they didn't, humanity would be ready. Not because they wanted war, but because they understood it completely. They had studied it, perfected it, and most importantly, learned to fear it. That fear, that understanding, that choice to be better, that was humanity's real strength. And the galaxy was slowly beginning to understand what the Kratoth had learned the hard way. You don't declare war on a species that chose peace because they know exactly what the alternative looks like. Because when you force them to remember what they're capable of, you won't like what you find. The humans had shown mercy. They had demonstrated restraint. They had proven that peace came from strength, not weakness, and every species in the galaxy now knew. Humanity wasn't peaceful because they couldn't fight. They were peaceful because they could.